Greetings, Guardians. My name is Ascended Nomad, and today I'm not your Crucible Doctor. I'm here to fill in for Bife as he continues to recover from his illness. As a long-time listener and fan, it is nothing short of a great honour to be asked to fill in, and I hope I can do the great man himself justice. Get well soon, my friend. Today, we'll be talking about the Scorn and their place in Warlord's Ruin. This is one of those topics that's a little trickier to talk about than some others. That's mainly because the Scorn and Warlord's Ruin aren't one homogeneous group. There are two distinct sets of Scorn that occupy the fortress's remains, those raised by Hempt and those raised by the fanatic, Fikrul. With apologies to the nation of Iceland, my pronunciation of Hempt is based on the limited information online. In the video previously narrated by Datto, which covered the House of Kings, the topic of the creation process of the Scorn was explained a little. I think it's worth talking a little bit more about that here, especially when it comes to Fikrul, aka the Fanatic. He is actually the first ever Scorn, as best as we know, so the story of his creation, or rather resurrection, is worth going into. But before we speak on that though, here are the absolute basics. Scorn are essentially undead fallen. Their ether has turned into dark ether thanks to corruption from the darkness. There are only 4 beings that have been able to create Scorn to the best of our knowledge: Riven, the Fanatic, the Witness, and Hempt. Creating a Scorn also requires the Fallen you're transforming to be, slightly dead. We see a great example of this in the lore thanks to the Forsaken Prince lorebook. It recounts the moments before Forsaken when Prince Uldren first heard the whispers of the Siren of Riven, which spoke with Mara's voice. It's worth remembering that, at this point, Riven had been taken by Oryx and had been corrupted, although she had still managed to retain her free will after his death thanks to her bargain with Oryx. At this point, Riven not only has wish magic, but also the power of darkness. All that was necessary for Riven to create a Scorn now was a dead Eliksni. The voice that Riven was projecting into Uldren's mind beckoned him towards a battlefield, and towards a choice that would change the system of Sol forever. Just a whisper, just a brush of reassurance, just a quaver. Uldren, my rescuer. He follows the voice. The violence of his thruster burns bruises his body, down from the tumbling corvette to the harnessed asteroid below, where shattered servitors and the wreckage of Shanks mark the site of a losing battle. Guardians ambushing a fallen party. His suit's chemiceptors detect a trace of ether. He follows it in. And there it is, a fallen Archon, crumpled in the dust. Ether hisses through entry and exit wounds cauterized by brutal solar flames, the mark of the golden gun. Uldren hisses in disgust as he traces Guardian's footprints in the dust. They must have sprinted off together in a rush, no doubt to farm some other site where skiffs were coming down with mining parties. He triages the Archon's wounds. Mortal. The victim is shaking now, trembling under Uldren's hands. He wants so badly to do something, anything, to ease the poor soldier's passing, to have the power some say his sister had, to save just by proximity. Does he wish it? Does he wish to save this poor thing? He does. He does. His eyes burn with sympathetic tears as he works to bind the Archon's wounds. His hands are quick and gentle, and he weeps with the strength of his hatred for the Guardians that did this. As tears stain the Archon's wounds, the ether rolling through Uldren's fingers slowly grows heavier, darker, more noxious. He does not notice. Finally, he leans back to smear his knuckles across his eyes. Sore. They're always so sore. Under the unmarked helmet, 4 dead eyes open in wonder. The Archon croaks a word, a broken leftover of a dying hallucination, calling out to whoever he wanted to see welcoming him into the afterlife. Dad? This moment shows us that resurrection process for a Scorn, as conducted by the power of Riven. Uldren's wish gave rise to Fikrul, who has been one of the only prominent characters in the Scorn's narrative. His campaign of carnage within the reef is well known, but after a certain point it seems that he fled the tangled shore. His trail runs somewhat cold at this point, but we now know at least a little more about what's happened to him since Forsaken, thanks to information we can hear from Petra and Crow.
Wait. Guardian. The knights you fought are marked. Something we did with the Barons.
Crow, You aren't responsible for this. These Scorn didn't come from the reef.
I'm not seeing things. It's a signature in the dark ether.
Fikrul has been missing from the shore for some time. You can let this go.
Luckily for us, we don't just get a non-specific bit of information from Petra and Crow. We also get the lore tab of the Buried Bloodline, which is from the perspective of the Fanatic. From the lore of this exotic, we now know more about both the Scorn that were originally raised by Hempt and the Broken Knights that we face in combat. Broken Bloodline reads as follows. Shallow graves give way to old vendettas and hungry claims. Fikrul stands on the bridge of a seized ketch. Ravagers keep watch over a handful of Elixni that remain to pilot the vessel. 5 heavily armored Scorn kneel before Fikrul, their heads bowed in reverence. Fikrul steps forward. Dark rumors whisper from the dreaming city. The reef hunts us, the darkness claims us, and our father is not returning. But even without Uldren Sov, new Scorn still rise. Old Scorn still live, unseen. Fikrul waits for silence before looking beyond the 5 armored Scorn knights to the greater horde that gathers. He turns and points his staff at the pilots. These Elixni, they speak of Scorn risen on earth, where dead things will hunt them, or darkness claims them. We serve only Scorn! Fikrul raises his staff above his head. We will bring them home! Open their minds as I have for you, as I will for all Scorn! The horde gnashes and cheers. Rathil, Malaris, Vrissix, Nemex, Serlox, ascend! Commands Fikrul over the commotion. The 5 armored Scorn stand. You, loyal Sworn, will be my knights. Scorn move from behind them to present the knights with staves made in the image of their leaders. Go to Earth. Bring brothers and sisters home before darkness claims them. The knights bow. Rathil, Fikrul places a hand on the center knight. You will lead. Rathil enters the quarters of the Ketch's dead captain to see Fikrul gazing at walls of bound tomes filled with Elixni scroll. Rathil could not understand the contents of these books, but his father had learned much from them. With time, he would learn to unravel their secrets as well. Father, you called me. We prepare to leave. Fikrul turns, a polished steel case in his lower arms. I have one last gift for you. Fikrul opens the case to display a clean-looking weapon, a sleek bolt caster. Rathil could see its original Elixni design, twisted, broken, and refashioned into something stronger, as he was. Claimed from kings by wolves, modified. Scorn now, like us. I am honored, Rathil says, gently lifting the weapon from its case and bowing. Fikrul looks upon his son with pride. I send you to claim kings, as we once did as wolves. Carry our history with you. Claim it. Bring it home. There is so much we can learn from all of this, but the first thing we can learn is this. The 5 Baron-sized Scorn that we face in the dungeon were not originally of the House of Kings like the others. They were raised by Fikrul and were anointed as his knights. Petra and Crow's further analysis of this contingent of knights rings true, as they assess later in the dungeon that they were sent here on a diplomatic mission.
This all feels personal. Uldren links to the kings, both linked to Fikrul. My one dangling thread.
Step back from yourself. New Scorn Rising drew Fikrul's attention, kings no less. What if this was a diplomatic envoy? The witnesses' Scorn are empty flesh-made weapons, but the Scorn here appear to express a crude culture.
Fikrul's followers have always been different, capable of learning. Maybe he saw that potential here.
then maybe you can still get through to him.
It's here that we also need to highlight something else that Fikrul says. According to the Fanatic, the Scorn here on Earth are not yet claimed by the Darkness. This rings true with what is being stated by Petra and Crow. These Scorn, raised beyond the complete and overriding will of the Witness, have been able to make their own culture based around whatever controls them and whatever is in proximity to them. This is why the Scorn here worship the bones and the remains of Hempt. This is why they have formed their cult. This also isn't the first time we've seen evidence of this. Back in Season of the Lost, we were able to enter the Ascendant Plane through the ley lines. We were doing this to recover Mara's lost Techeuns, but along the way, we found many curiosities. One of them was a ritual being conducted by the Scorn that were being poured into the ley lines. Check this out.
So, the Scorn stage some sort of ritual combat? This is not of Eliksni culture. Are they developing their own?
In the Ascendant Plane, the Scorn here were coordinating with the forces of Xivu Arath. The ritualistic combat they were taking part in seemed to be a test of strength. Perhaps it harkens back to the sword logic. This would make sense given Xivu Arath's dominant will and the principles in which she believed. From this we can assume that anyone of a dominant will can effectively control any Scorn they come into contact with, and effectively enforce cultural norms and standards upon them. Xivu Arath's Scorn practiced the sword logic. The Witness's Scorn were mindless beasts. Hempt's Scorn were invoking his remains in a form of worship that mimicked desire and respect. Every controller of the Scorn imparts their beliefs unto their subordinates as a cultural mark. This assertion brings us back to Fikrul's Knights, who we meet in the process of clearing Warlord's Ruin. These Knights are different though. They're listed as the Broken Knights, indicating that something about them has changed. When they arrive in the second and third boss fight of the dungeon, their arrival is preceded by the words, "Scorn rise to invoke their fortunes and your demise." This is followed by the appearance of these Scorns and their strange totems filled with taken energy. Upon cleansing these totems, you can look within and you'll see that the center of them is filled with shards of Ahamkara bone. This tells us what's happened to Fikrul's knightly brothers. They've been turned. Given the immense willpower of Hempt, these once knights of the Fanatic have become broken. They now serve the will of the Wish Dragon, worshipping its bones and using them to invoke our ruination. Hempt's will is stronger than any directive given to the Scorn by the Fanatic. Thus, they have become one of Hempt's greatest assets, as they deliver into our hands the tools needed to vanquish those that used to stand for the House of Kings. Fikrul's Knights have failed. But as Petra notes, Fikrul is still out there, and he can be reached. His knights may be dead, and the Scorn within the ruin may not have joined his fold, but Fikrul remains a wildcard within the system. His future, and what it might mean for the Scorn, the system, and Crow, is something we'll be discussing in one of our next videos. So get subscribed and hit that bell if you haven't already to get notified as soon as that video is ready. That's all from me today. For the regular viewers of this channel, it has been a great pleasure to bring you Bife's words, and I sincerely thank you and Bife for having me. My name is Ascendant Nomad, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.